Certainly there are people, stunt guys who have played various roles and just put on a mask, but they don't sell that well. The basic studio exec, legal, business affairs, publicity, yeah, just put a mask on a stuntman. Well, that's spoken by men and women who could never do it themselves, who have no concept of what it means to do that. It's like somebody who's never had sex going, oh yeah. All you do is, oh really? Yeah, yeah, okay. Well, why don't you try it one time, motherfucker, and then we'll see what you do.
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding in even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply...
For over 40 years, the Halloween series has thrilled and terrified audiences. From its low-budget origins to spawning a new era of slashers. The franchise remains a cultural touchstone around the world, often referred to as the Gone with the Wind of horror. From the first chilling notes of the iconic score to the final frame, join Joel Brown as we explore the iconic horror series, digging deep into the characters, the storylines, and the spine-chilling scares. Welcome to Talking Shape with Joel Brown, the ultimate podcast for Halloween franchise enthusiasts.
My next guest is an actor, stunt double, and stunt performer with a list of credits spanning over 30 plus years, and he now holds the distinction of playing the Shape Michael Myers the most times than any other actor or predecessor. It's a huge welcome to James Jude Courtney. Hello.
What's up, man? Good to be here.
It's great to have you on the show. Now, in doing a bit of research, you had a epiphany that you were going to be an actor or in show business. Can you go back to that time when that epiphany happened? Was it a visual thing or just a thought? What happened?
No, it was a knowing. It was in fourth grade. I had several epiphanies in fourth grade for some reason. Fourth grade is in the United States is when you can start playing contact football. Fourth grade is when, there's a lot of things that happen in fourth grade. You're 10 years old, and the epiphanies I had, I somehow figured out reincarnation. I had no idea. I figured out that I'd be an older man, marry a younger woman later in life. That's happening now. And I just had this epiphany. It was just a download. I'm going to make movies. I'm going to make movies for a living. So, and I didn't put up posters and dream about it. Because it's a knowing. It's like, this is my path. So I picked up my father's 1950s era Kodak tri-lens 8mm camera in the fifth grade, and every school project, anything I could think of doing, I was making movies. Little, really, really, really bad, but they were movies. And my dad had a little moviola editor, and I would edit, and my mom was my first cameraman, and my brothers were my first actors. And so for me, I consider myself a filmmaker. I went to Los Angeles. I mean, I couldn't afford, back in the 70s when I was going to college, the only real film schools were NYU, UCLA, and Southern Cal. And that was way out of my reach financially. So I went to college majoring to one of the best journalism schools in the nation, one of the top ranked journalism schools at the University of South Carolina. And my thinking was, I wanted to learn how to manipulate minds, because everything we do, whether you're a journalist, whether you're a filmmaker, a poet, a musician, a painter, we are playing with the minds of human beings. So then the question is, what do we want them to know? What do we want them to feel? What evocative approach are we going to take? So journalism taught me a lot. And as far as filmmaking goes, I consider myself a filmmaker. It happened to be an actor, I happen to be a stuntman. I happen to write. I'm producing a film now. It's all part of the game.
And the stunt work, is that something that you kind of fell into, sort of wanting to be an actor? I mean, sort of like, I guess I'm just imagining as a stuntman, you kind of have to be athletic and, you know how to fall, or, have some form of background, like whether it be kind of like a karate sort of for fighting, or how did that sort of come into the acting part of things for you?
Well, I had a coach who I met when I did a play called Requiem for Heavyweight. It's a Rod Serling play. Ran for 9 weeks in Long Beach. It went to Broadway for one night, open and closed. But it was a great experience, and got my first agent out of that. And Ron Ray was his name. Ray Roberts, I think, is the name he used when he worked in the movie industry. But he was a lecturer and a coach at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. Took a liking to me. He started working with me privately. He got me an audition for the Adventures of Conan, the live Conan show at the Universal Studios tour. It was a beautiful multi-million-dollar set, fire-breathing dragon. I fought with double swords. I did a high fall, but I'd never tended to do stunts. My intention was to go out to. I finally moved out at 25 from to Los Angeles. My intention was to be a huge star by 28. Tell the studios what I was going to do by 30, and be right at the top of the food chain by 35. It's not exactly the way it went. So, but he got me this audition, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do it. But I'd done martial arts from 7th grade. I boxed a little, I boxed, martial arts, played football, played basketball. I have 6 younger brothers. We're all, very athletic, and now the next generation are state and national champion athletes. And, so athletics was, a very natural thing. So I went to the audition for the live show. Got a part as double swordsman. Then I was elevated to the lead bad guy role, who did a 20-foot high fall into a flaming pit, and that was just fun. So back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s, I mean the 80s and even the 90s, somebody who does what I do is neither fish nor fowl. If you're an actor and a stuntman, the consensus was, oh, he's just an actor who can do some stunts, or he's just a stuntman who can say a few words. But no one really got the idea that you could chew gum and walk at the same time, and that was so a lot of really, really good actors just gave up acting and went directly into stunts and ended up making $500,000 a year. I mean, they did great. Alex Daniels, one of my very dear friends, who's now president of the Stuntmen's Association. The dude, incredible Shakespearean actor. He's got a voice like Tony Bennett. I mean, he plays multiple instruments. The guy, but he put all that aside to do stunts. For me, I looked at it as I wanted every experience that I could possibly get, because I knew that I was moving on to making my own films, and I knew that I was going to be playing characters in these films. Well, and little did I know I'd be playing the Shape. But I knew that I'd be playing characters that were going to require insane levels of physicality, the depth of psychology, spirituality. Like, I needed all these different experiences to build what I thought was going to be the framework of my career.
It was Marlon. Was it Marlon Brando's acting coach was that the one that you mentioned earlier?
No, that was she was Stella Adler. So I worked with Stella Adler as well, and she was tough. She was good. She it was very, very difficult to study with her to get in. So it was a super honor. And one of the things she did was she made us go, whatever scene we were doing, she made us go to Western Costume and hire a costume, to basically rent a costume. Well, back in the 80s, you'd spend $100, $150, $200 to rent a costume. And for people who are struggling and working their way up in the business, man, that's a lot of freaking money. Back in then, it was a lot of money. It's a lot of money for a young actor now. I mean, in the 80s, it was like, 4 times what its value is now. And so but was one of the gifts she gave me. There's so many gifts, but when you put a costume on, and if you allow yourself to, and if you absorb the energy of that costume, it's going to change you. And so, for instance, Emily Gorsuch, the costume designer for the 3 Halloween films I did, I think she's absolutely brilliant. And so what I did often was I would go into, Chris Nelson's makeup trailer, and, that was an hour to several hours process. Chris and I had our own rhythm. Chris would always introduce, he would look at this call sheet for the night before, decide what music we're going to listen to. We have very similar taste. Both of us consider David Bowie our number one art influence. And so we both really shared that. And then, of course, a plethora of other artists from all over the world, certainly in different genres. And then I would go into my dressing room and I would put on Emily's costume, and then I would sit and marinate in that. I would allow that to just take over my being. So the metamorphosis was complete when I finally got the costume on. The metamorphosis started with Chris in the trailer, in special effects makeup. And the final connection was, the metamorphosis was almost all there because I put that costume on. So one of the, again, many, many lessons I learned from her, but she taught me how to pay attention to very subtle things and to draw the energy and draw the wisdom from those subtle things and allow them to control me in ways that I wouldn't control myself.
That's a great transition to the next question I had, because I have Christopher Nelson here. You obviously sort of mentioned that you sort of gelled really well. Obviously, he was the special effects guy. He created the mask, and I guess you sort of mentioned it was like a spiritual sort of thing where you would turn into the character. Now, a lot of guys maybe in the past just thought it was just putting on a mask and stepping on a line here and doing what they need to do, but you really sort of took it on as like, you need to become this character, and you study a particular type of. I'm trying to think of what you studied, like the spiritual side of it. I think you mentioned it in a previous interview.
Well, actually, this is the confluence of a lifetime of experience. Christopher Nelson and I feel like Christopher Nelson and I co-created this character. Certainly I created the lion's share of the experience of the character, but I think the co-creation happened with Nick Castle initially creating the character that I embraced the energy of, and Christopher Nelson creating the special effects makeup that changed me and allowed me to become this character. And then, of course, all the internal work. And the internal work is, decades of studying as an actor, decades of spiritual work, psychological work, traveling to South America and doing cleansing rituals for 3 weeks in the Andes before I went to the jungles to do ayahuasca. And then the ensuing 20 or so ayahuasca journeys I did in the backyard of Dr. Alan Blank, the former chief of staff of Cedars-Sinai Psychiatric Ward. I've done iboga with African shaman. I've done peyote with North American First Nations shaman. I've worked with Cuban shaman. So these shamanic journeys are not necessarily for the faint of heart. Iboga, definitely not for the faint of heart. Like, strap your ass in, buddy, because it's going to be a 2-day journey, and it's not going to be pleasant. So, that kind of work. Then my first film, Freeway Maniac, my still very good friend Paul Winters directed that film, wrote and directed it, and we had no idea what we're doing. We never made a film. We had no idea how to make a film. We just freaking did it. And for that reason, I'm grateful for Paul. Well, Paul arranged for us, he and I, to stay in a psychiatric ward for in a lockdown ward for a weekend. And these are with psychopathic killers, paranoid schizophrenics. But these guys have been in there for 15, 20, 25 years. They're all doing the Thorazine shuffle. You know what I mean? They're absolutely harmless. But they were candid, and I could get into their psyches, and then the psychologist would help me, understand it. Then as far as movement goes, I've done several different martial arts, but the art that informed the movement of this character the most is Aikido. Because Aikido, you don't lift up your feet, you don't kick, your feet are very, very much like a whirling dervish, like the Sufi master whirling dervishes. It's very circular and flowing. The hara, which is 2 inches below your belly button, is like a gyroscope. You maintain constant balance and fluidity. And so the object of the way I moved as the shape was that fluidity, that balance, that smooth. And when they tried to find someone to play the shape, the flashback shape in Halloween Kills, they looked at over 200 people, couldn't find anybody to move like me. It just so happened that Aaron Armstrong, who was the stunt coordinator on Halloween Kills, had also practiced. He's a kung fu guy, but he had also done, like myself, 10 or 15 years of Aikido, in addition to all the other arts. So when we sat down and talked about it, I didn't even have to show him. I just told him how I moved, and boom, he picked it up.
And I think just sort of hearing that, like I'm obviously saying like a massive Halloween fan, and there's, I think this is the horror franchise where there's so many fans, and sort of hearing you sort of explain that background, I think that kind of goes a long way with fans, but also just sort of, watching these three movies, I'd have to say this is probably, people have their opinion about the trilogy, but this incarnation of Michael Myers is probably one of the best, if as close to the original. And you mentioned Nick Castle, and I think he asks John Carpenter, when he's doing the scene, he's walking across the house to the other house. He goes, "What's my motivation here? What is it?" And John Carpenter said to him, "Just walk." Like, so I'm not sure if you had did you have this sort of really in-depth conversation with Nick Castle, or who's just like, "Oh, I was just told to walk"?
Nick and I have never talked about the character ever. I met him 3 weeks in. The caveat, Nick is very flippant about that. I'll add a caveat to that. Look at his filmography. Look at what he's written. Look at what he's directed. Look at what he's created. Look at him as a musician. Look at him as, all the things he does, he didn't just walk. A talented artist will take nothing and make something out of it. That's what Nick Castle did. Nick Castle took what Deborah Hill and John Carpenter wrote. He took what he saw happening around him. He took what he felt as the character, and he imbued it with something naturally. It's just something an artist does. So, I'm gonna call bullshit on "I just walked," and secondly, I think the way I captured it was, there was a great old character actor named Ted Knight. I just moved out to Los Angeles. I was waiting on tables. I only had to wait on tables a few years, which I was very blessed. I was lucky to hit pretty quickly, and I'm grateful for the experience of being a server. I think everybody should be a server, frankly. But I was waiting on this dashing 65-year-old man walks in with this 20-something, ingenue, and I was like, "Whoa, you got it going on, man! Right on, dog!" And he said, "You're an actor." I went, "How do you know?" He goes, "I can tell." He goes, "Sit down." I can't sit down. He goes, "Well, stand here and talk to me." And we talked about acting. And one of the things, the greatest gift I think probably anybody ever gave me as an actor was, he said, "Learn to emulate. Emulate the bartender. Emulate the guy walking down the street. Emulate your mother. Emulate everybody. But when you emulate them, don't look at the way they move their hand. Don't try to do their voice the way don't try to get their accent. Reach inside their soul. And if you can grab their soul, you will naturally do everything the way they do it." And so I practiced that. It's a very spiritual experience. So when I was called to go down to Charleston, to be put on tape, I watched it's 1978 Halloween one time, and there's a scene where Nick Castle is going camera left to camera right in a backyard. All he's doing is walking as the shape, and I went, "I got it. Whatever he created, I got it." So then from that point forward, I didn't think about the way I was going to move. I didn't practice. I didn't look in the mirror. I never gave it a second thought, because I knew I had grasped what he did, and it was inside me. And once it was inside me, then I was going to let it have to filter through all these years of all this life experience that I've had, which was going to create the shape through James Jude Courtney.
Something interesting that I recently just watched, I was just flipping through my phone, and it was Quentin Tarantino, and he said that Harvey Keitel sort of said to him, when you're casting an actor, or you're watching them do their read, let them do it the first time how they imagined the character or the scene to be, because it's so easy to give notes after the fact, because by giving them or telling them notes before they do their bit, it kind of may change what they initially had in their head, and what they had in their head might have been pure gold, so to speak. So was it kind of like one of those things, like you semi sort of studied what Nick Castle did, but you thought you're going to put your own little spin on it as well?
I didn't, I didn't even consider it a spin. I just grasped his soul.
Yeah.
Like, energetically grabbed a hold of him, never gave it a second thought. And then the only thing I did for preparation was breathing, and I breathe. Because I breathe the character in, and I breathe him out. It's why I don't carry him with me. It's why I'm not in a psych ward. It's because, I literally breathe the character in, allow it to inhabit me, allow it to control me. And then I breathe it back out. When we hear check the gate, as soon as we're done with a particular setup, I breathe it right back out of me. But I'd captured the character so completely that I was on tape. The casting director was asking questions, having me move, all the kind of stuff you have to do. I went out to the parking lot, got in my pickup truck, wasn't even out of the parking lot. I got a call from California. I'm in South Carolina, in Charleston, South Carolina. I get a call from California, from Blumhouse, and they're like, "Hey, you available?" I was like, yeah, I'm available. Didn't even get 2 miles to the freeway, and they called me back and they said, "Hey, David Gordon Green wants to meet you. Can we make that happen?" And so I went back. I met Malik Akkad and Ryan Turek and Ryan Freeman and David Gordon Green and Danny McBride, and I just had the same experience. I just let them know that this is what my being created in terms of the shape. And as far as I know, they never looked at another person. They were just like, "Dude, done."
That's amazing. I mean, like I said before, just sort of, I guess, I think Halloween fans could appreciate the amount of level or, thought that's gone into it. Because again, like, a lot of people just think it's just a person wearing a mask and overalls, right? And speaking of the mask, Chris Nelson basically created as close to the original mask that we've probably seen in the whole franchise, besides obviously the second film. You will not put that mask on again. Is that obviously because, as you just explained, how like what that transformation that you go to be the character, is that sort of like respecting that you don't want to put that mask on because you kind of feel you'd be taken away from all the effort that went into portraying the shape on screen?
Yeah, I don't put the mask on because, first and foremost, because I know what happens. I know the energy, and the ancient Greeks didn't consider themselves actors. They considered themselves channels. They channeled the spirits of those entities that were playing the characters. This is how I work. So that's a living, breathing entity that I don't necessarily want inside me. I think and you'll notice, like, if you go to convention, you'll see, especially guys who play Jason. They'll put on a Jason costume and they'll do photo ops with a costume on. You won't find one guy who played Michael Myers putting on a Michael Myers costume, except for one guy who didn't really play him. Tony Moran. I mean, he was in one scene, but you'll notice that everybody who has actually played the character and has respect for the character, we don't even do that. None of us will put that on and do photo ops. It's a fact. So, for me, it's out of respect for the character. It's out of respect for the work that we all created. And, frankly, for me, the other guys who want to go into costumes, whatever the characters they played and whatever movies they played, man, do what you want to do. That's you. For me, it would take a character that I greatly revered and that I poured my heart and soul into, and make it turn it into a clown in a sideshow. And I gotta say one more thing, man. You brought up, just putting on a mask and walking. Certainly there are people, stunt guys who have played various roles and just put on a mask or, but they don't sell that well. The basic studio exec, legal, business affairs, publicity, those guys, yeah, just put a mask on a stuntman. Well, that's spoken by men and women who could never do it themselves, who have no concept of what it means to do that. It's like somebody who's never had sex going, "Oh yeah. All you do is," "Oh really?" Yeah, okay. Well, why don't you try it one time, motherfucker, and then we'll see what you do. You know what I mean? So I think it's really important to understand. I think the fans get that. I think they get when you throw, and I think, for instance, Chris Duran, I think, did a really, really wonderful job. He's a martial artist and a spiritual man, and we've had wonderful conversations about, our approach and what we did and what we felt, and so I think that's I think it's important, and I think the fans appreciate that.
1,000%. And back to Christopher Nelson, you called him the shape maker. He would help you sort of transform into the shape, obviously the mask. And you said he would look at the call sheet and sort of he would, create a playlist or have an album. Off the top of your head, can you remember coming in to work one day? What was playing? What was the album, or what was the vibe, the tunes that were playing?
It wasn't playing. What happened was I would sit down, everything would be readied for me, and then he'd go over and he'd hit play, and then the work would start. I avoided listening to Dark Star for a very, very long time. I'm not a fan of anybody or anything, but I felt a personal relationship with David Bowie and what he had created, with all his art, with everything that he did, and I just knew that it wasn't. And I have all of his albums, and I've been following him since I was a kid. I just wasn't ready to hear that album, and if I'm remembering correctly, he played that album for me. It was a pivotal. I think it was the death scene, and but anyways, it was a very, very powerful scene. I tend to lose consciousness when I'm in that moment when Chris and I are creating. Yeah, sometimes we have great conversations, sometimes we laugh, but Chris is a wonderful collaborator. He's a really kind, gentle, funny, insanely talented, batshit crazy guy, and so we had a lot of fun, but it's also really serious. And he would often say, it's really amazing how many actors and stuntmen don't want to be in the makeup chair. And I'm like, dude, that's part of the creative process. Like right now, we are metamorphizing this character into a living, breathing being. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a part of that? Maybe a stunt guy who has no concept of acting, or maybe an actor who's just there to take a paycheck. But that wasn't Chris and me, man. Chris and I had some, really. So yeah, so Dark Star was definitely the album that rocked my world.
And was it the live album by Grateful Dead, or is there a David Bowie album?
Did I say Dark Star or Black Star? Black Star.
Black Star.
I'm sorry. I'm brain farting right in front of your very eyes.
That's all good. No, because I was just looking up. I was trying to get.
Yeah, I say, dude, Dark Star. Where'd that come from?
It's a Grateful Dead live album, so you might have to check that out after this.
No, I mean, actually hearing the song right now, the Grateful Dead. Anyways, yeah. So no, it's Black Star, and I had avoided for years.
Yeah, Black Star, because that was his last David Bowie's last album. And do you that's
he knew he was dying.
Yeah. Do you think you avoided that as a fan because you knew this was his last offering, like the last thing that he was creating while he was dying, and this was the end, so to speak?
Because I don't process things like this intellectually. I tend to trust my intuition, and my intuition is really, really served me well. I have went through a period where 13 people close to me died. I held my brother's hand when he died. Several friends, business partners, my godparents, my aunt and uncle, my favorite uncle. I mean, it was just ridiculous how many people died in a very, very short period of time for me. And I mean, having been raised, I'm not a practicing Catholic, but I was raised Irish Catholic. Irish Catholics throw the best freaking funerals on the planet. There's no party like an Irish Catholic funeral. Like, the music, the booze, the joy, the laughter, it's so for me, processing death, I have come to understand that I have my own rhythm that I need to honor. I don't know that I didn't consciously avoid it. I was conscious of the fact that I was avoiding it, but I knew that I would listen to it at the right time. Yeah. And so, and of course, given the perfection of the relationship that Chris and I enjoyed, creatively, of course it would be Chris who would bring that to me at the right place in the right time.
It's funny you mention that, because I haven't indulged in that album. I'd say I'm a David Bowie fan. Wouldn't say I'm a super fan, but yeah, it's an album that I haven't looked at, and maybe I was sort of projecting my own kind of feeling, like, this is the last. This is it. This is the last thing that he put to recording, right until he sadly passed away.
Yeah, he was definitely saying goodbye, and he was definitely leaving the world with. I mean, the man was insanely well read, incredibly well read, and I've heard people call him a nihilist, and put all these labels on David Bowie. You can't do that. You can't do that to a mind like his. His mind was so expansive. His his knowledge and awareness and again his musical influences. Like if you listen to his music, you can hear he's very unabashed about his influences. He's very unabashed about the authors that he was moved by. And so I think he was very, very clear with what he was leaving the world. And a great artist like that, there's never a good time to check out, man.
And something interesting I found out prior to your involvement in the Halloween franchise, you kind of had a bit of a connection to the franchise prior to you starting, in the sense that you're good friends with Rick Rosenthal and Nancy Stevens.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I played tennis at their house for a while, and got to know my girlfriend at the time, Sally, and I spent quite a bit of time up there. And then Sally was also really good friends with Nancy's mother, who was just a spitfire, man. But Nancy and Rick's a badass, man. He was still playing hardcore hockey until it's well into his 70s. So the dude is not, he's a man's man. I mean, and I love him to death. He's kind, he's generous, and he's funny. And of course, Nancy is just a remarkable woman. And so it was so great because I hadn't seen them in years, and gosh, maybe 15 years, because I'd gone and traveled for 5 years, and then all this kind of crazy stuff happened. So, Sally and I moved on, and she went and got married, and all that stuff. So then when I first saw her on the set of Halloween Kills, it was like, yo, we're just like, Nancy, oh my God, like it was so great to see her, and it was so fun to kill her.
I guess, was there any conversation before or after that, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, we got to hang out, which was great, and we've gotten we've been able to hang out and catch up, and that kind of stuff. So it's really sweet. And Rick is such a freaking talented director, man. I mean, he's just done such wonderful work. I think he did a great job in the Halloween franchise, and I think I just love his filmography. He's just done great stuff.
Now, you mentioned before about not, most Michael Myers people who portrayed him not wearing the mask at sort of conventions or things like that. Now, what about, let's say, if there was a continuation within the storyline and trilogy that you were involved with, or if there was a reboot, would you don the mask again, or do you see yourself sort of staying loyal to David Gordon Green and that set of people, and wouldn't do that unless they were involved in some capacity?
It'd be hard. It'd be hard to duplicate or replicate, duplicate, or even come close to what David Gordon Green created, and Danny, and it was the confluence of all the things coming together. Now, would it be possible that another really wonderful director and some really wonderful writers would want to take it someplace, and we're still in the time frame where they're going to use? I mean, because remember, David Gordon Green, when the stunt coordinator for Halloween 2018 read the script, he called David and he called Malik Akkad and said, "Hey guys, the script is way different than anything that's been done before. Whoever plays the shape is going to have really deep acting chops and be a very good stuntman." And David Gordon Green said, "Okay, well, he's got to be 6'3", 200 pounds, and he's got to be in his 60s. Who do you know?" So, David was very exacting about what he wanted in this character, and I happen to fit that, that right into that glove. David is that exacting with every single person in front of that camera. He looks at every picture and looks at the extras and sees who he likes and doesn't like. He's very particular about wardrobe. He's very particular about, he knows what he wants. And then what he creates is he knows what he wants. He gives you that sandbox, and then he lets you rip, man. He just lets you fly. David never directed me. David told me what he needed in terms of blocking, or what, like what the shape, what the scene was about, or what he was looking for. But he never directed me. The only direction he gave me was, he called me after I got cast, and he said, so Jim, so I've been thinking, "Oh, the shape needs to move like a cat." And I was like, "Well, that's crazy because my cat's in my lap right now and I watch him hunt all the time." And he goes, "Okay, well, we got that settled. So what's up, man?" Like, and then it was just, you know, so yeah, it's special. This was lightning in a bottle. And would I be open to it? Yes. Is it likely to happen? No.
It's sort of just speaking of becoming the shape and creating tension. Like, say for example, the opening scene to Halloween 2018, you're essentially just standing in a square, and your co-star is holding a mask, and technically not much is happening, but the tension that that was created from that scene, do you sort of put that in part with sort of David Gordon Green, how he set things up, how he set up the other patients, and yourself being in the zone, and all the actors being in the zone for that particular scene? Like, because and I'm not trying to take away from the opening scene, but there's technically not much happening, but the tension that builds, right?
Oh yeah, and that's pure David Gordon Green. I mean, and the art department, art direction. I mean, and costume and casting, all the nutcases that are surrounding me, the actors that I worked with. Man, those guys were 100% in, 100% in. The energy between us. I mean, I wasn't facing them. We were still looking at each other. You know what I mean? We were still, even though we're back to back, we were still looking at each other. And I stood out there without a coat on. It was I don't know it's centigrade very well, but it's 29 degrees. So freezing is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. It was 29 degrees. Then the wind chill was -8 degrees because the wind coming off the bay. And I was there in scrubs, freezing my fucking ass off. And I hacked up green shit for a week after that. I got so sick. But we all wanted the tension of that discomfort and that insanity and what was at stake in this moment. And so and as a testament to Chris Nelson's work, Bob, before he held the mask up, he was like, I walked up and I started talking. He goes, "Hey, mate, what happened to your eye?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, you remember back in in the original where Jamie stabs him?" And he goes, "Oh fuck me, I thought your eye was really fucked up. Oh my god, that's a prosthetic."
Okay, out of the three, and some may have the same answer, but would love to know, out of the three Halloween films that you did, which was the most fun, the most challenging, and the one you're most proud of?
Well, first of all, I see it as all one movie.
Yep.
18 is the first act, Kills the second act, Ends is the third act. So I really have to look at it through the lens of having made. I really there's a certain specialness to each of them. I think, for instance, in 2018, this is all of us beginning to work together. This is the magic of the deeply spiritual aspect of this character, which David created this incredible, canvas for us to paint on, and for Chris to paint on, myself, and the other actors, and so I think I would look at 2018 as a very spiritual experience. Then for Halloween Kills, it's like it was so violent and physical, and it was so cathartic to let all that out, all that violence out. And so in sexual analogies, I mean, 2018 was like making love, and Halloween Kills was sport fucking in an orgy. I mean, it was just like, it was insane. It was just so insane. And then Halloween Ends, it takes it right back into the spiritual. Jamie, when we shot the finale, which, by the way, hands down my favorite scene, not only my favorite scene to have shot in the movies, but to have shot ever in my career. And she said that was absolutely the same for her. Like, it was like right up there, like she'd never done. And she said it was the most powerful thing she's ever experienced in a scene. And I did too. Well, of course it was. She's putting to rest, 40 some odd years of this. And so, when she came over to me, well, actually, I called her over. I got on the set when we were going to shoot the finale, and I called her over. I said, Jamie, let's talk about this. We went beat by beat. We had tears welled in our eyes. And then at a certain point, when Chris is doing special effects makeup on me and they're resetting lights, I held my hand out, and she just stood next to me, holding my hand with her eyes closed for an hour. I have that picture, but I've never posted it because I think it's just for shit. It's just for Jamie and myself. But she held my hand for an hour. And we both went through the emotions as the character of wanting to kill the other person and then wanting to just give up and die. And so it was this teeter-totter, it was a seesaw between us of energy. And the woman is so professional and so 100% locked in, and we exposed so much of ourselves emotionally in that scene. So for me, that I think that we had created another ending, but I think the way David built that up for the finale between Jamie and myself, I think he saw that in the very ending, with how they disposed of the body was the best way to do it. But for me, that scene hands down encapsulates everything that we did in those three films.
I absolutely love Halloween Ends. I think out of the three, it's my absolute favorite. But it's for some reason very divisive amongst fans. From your perspective, why do you think that is?
For the same reason Season of the Witch was, all right, because and I remember several times on set, David walking on set wearing a Season of the Witch t-shirt. He was not too subtle about the fact that he was going to fuck with people. And I think just like Season of the Witch, David knows that it's going to grow. It's going to become a cult classic. He knows that. He is not the director he is because he's a stupid guy. You know what I mean? He's prescient. He sees things ahead. Think of the prescience of his films. In 2018, I mean, he's dealing with #MeToo and alcoholism and family dynamics. Halloween Kills, he's dealing with mob mentality. We shot that how long before January 6th, before the insurrection? But it showed how regular, decent civilians, decent human beings can just lose their freaking minds in a mob mentality. I mean, he really, he illustrated that so perfectly. I think, Halloween Ends for me, and this is how I characterize it a lot for fans who don't like it. And this is absolutely true. To play American football, to play any football, to play Australian rules, to play anything, the first and foremost thing you've got to do if you have any chance of winning, let alone winning a championship, is you've got to buy into the coach's program. You've got to buy into the coach's program. If you don't like the coach's program, get out of the locker room, man. Go find another coach. Go find another team, because the coach's program is going to make or break your chances. So from that point, now, as an athlete and as an actor, I want to play every snap. I want to be on every down. I want to be in every single play. But if that's not the coach's program, I'm there for the team. I'm there to win that championship. I'm not there for my glory. It's the same thing with making a movie. I was there for the team. I was there for my Halloween family. I was there for Jamie and for Chris and for Ryan Turek and for Malika Akkad and for David and for all the beautiful people, Mike Simmons. I mean, all the people who were putting in this amazing energy into that project and believed in it. I was there for them. So I didn't get to play as much in that game, but I feel like we freaking won. So I'm happy.
You can speak on this or not speak on this, or you may not even know. Was the original concept for this trilogy to occur over the one night, or is that just a rumor that's out there?
I have never heard that from anybody who would know.
Yeah. With Halloween Ends, you're talking about the spiritual side of things, and I'm hoping you might be able to speak to this. When Michael Myers has Corey Cunningham by the throat down in the sewer, is it a transfer of evil, or is it Michael seeing something in Corey that he saw it himself back in 1963 before he killed his sister?
In my mythology, there is no evil. All right. Mm-hmm. All right. So that character exists for me in a fifth dimension like in a place outside of duality. There is no right or wrong, black or white, up or down. There's just isness. It's just is. So this character, the way I lived him, is just doing what he is meant to do. This is his design. You don't criticize a cat for playing with a mouse and then killing him. It's what cats do. Yeah. Michael Myers, the shape is doing what the shape does. Being that both Rowan and myself have had deep spiritual experiences in our lives, have done a lot of plant medicine with spiritual intent. We have very similar perspectives on how we work. That was absolutely an energy transference. The fans can judge what that energy is, but that's all it was. But energy transferences are powerful. We knew what we were doing, and there was absolutely that when we shot that scene.
And I think the thing I love and other fans love about Halloween's Ends is, and just in general, I think this is a great way to study film or read books or what have you, is, and especially I think it's more of a horror thing that's happened, is people have been very handheld with this means this or that means that. And I think Halloween's Ends is there's so many different interpretations you could take, from that scene or from the movie in general. Like I sort of took it as, the town of Haddonfield sort of, kind of did turn this kid bad. They kind of shunned him. They turned their back on him, and that was part of the reason why there was a bit of a transformation in with Corey Cunningham. But was that you see that transfer that happened there, was that always there? Or I just feel like and I think maybe that's why it got a bit lost on some fans, that maybe they weren't handheld enough. It was very kind of open-ended, and it was very kind of John Carpenter-esque. I feel he's say less, show more, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Again, this is classic David Gordon Green. He knew, he knows the depth and breadth of the audience. And he understands that certain audience members are going to have a keener awareness of archetypal characters and mythology. And some people are going to be, especially, there is no especially, like there's no age, whether it's a younger audience and an older audience, nuance is lost on a lot of people. And so I think what he did was he layered it, so there are Easter eggs for everybody at every layer, so that there was nuance, and you can go, oh yeah. And if you have a knowledge of mythology, or you have a knowledge of, if you've ever read Joseph Campbell, for instance, then you go, oh, okay, I see what you did there. If you don't know Joseph Campbell, or you don't know, the references that he makes in various places, in terms of mythology or spirituality or psychology, you're still going to be affected by it, because this is why we call characters archetypes. This is why this is why these mythologies exist. So I think David knew that the audience ultimately would either subconsciously or consciously get what he was saying. And then he also knew, based on his Season of the Witch t-shirts, that it was going to take some people 10 or 20 or 30 years to get it. And that's just fine, because that's what great art does. I was just looking at some Impressionist paintings up in Detroit at the Institute of Art up there. And it's so amazing when you study art, when you look at art and you just let it wash over you. And yes, in art, art historian will tell you, if the apple is held this way and the fingers are held this way, then that means this and this. True. But then there's these deeper things that happen in a work of art that only you can really understand in that moment for you. And that's when that piece of art speaks to you. And that's what David does. That's what he creates with Michael Simmons, insane director of photography.
I've got to put you on the spot here a little bit in regards to your co-stars and out of the trilogy. And I guess, there is no right or wrong answer here. I guess, which is your, which co-star out of this trilogy surprised you the most?
Wow, that's a hard question. Because really, again, it always goes back to the coach. It always goes back to the director, right? And what David managed to create for 3 films was this incredibly cohesive, talented, hardworking cast of characters. We all talked about it in the first one. that we felt like we had either been a village together in some past life, or we'd marched in a battle in some past life, or maybe we were a Shakespearean troupe. Who knows? I mean, but it was like, but except there were too many of us to be a Shakespearean troupe. But we all felt like we'd been there before. I think, no, man, because everybody gave what David expected them to give. And here's the deal: like when I even when I went to Los Angeles, when I finally graduated from college, I had way more credits in college than I needed, but I stayed as long as I could because I wanted to absorb anthropology and psychology and all the literature I could and all the film stuff I could, and I just kept absorbing, and then one day I woke up and it's time to graduate. So I went down, applied for graduation, graduated. My brother, myself, and a buddy jumped on motorcycles, toured the United States on motorcycles, ended up in California. I landed in California with the expectation, not the dream, not the hope, the expectation that I was going to do what I'm doing right now, or what I did for a career. I had that same expectation when I walk on a set. I expect that every other actor is going to have their shit tight just like mine. I expect that every stunt person is going to be a very talented athlete. I expect the director is going to know what he's doing. I expect that the cinematographer is going to know what he's doing. And I expect, so I just had these expectations, and they're almost always rewarded, So I have to say, no one surprised me. Everybody was exactly what I thought they were going to be.
What about favorite kill out of the trilogy?
Dude, that's a rough one. There's so many fun ones, like the bathroom in 2018. That was just so freaking brutal, and it was the first really brutal, So, but in 2018, also the window kill, because, dude, if I were gonna kill somebody, that's how I do it. Get in quiet, boom, done, gone. But the Cameron kill was kind of gratifying. I mean, snapping that little fucker's neck after he was being such a douchebag.
He kind of redeemed himself a little bit in kills, though, didn't he?
Well, that's a matter of opinion.
You mentioned your co-star Jamie Lee Curtis in that final scene that meant so much to the both of you. Is there any other great story that you could share about Jamie Lee Curtis? Because speaking to other people who have played Michael Myers, like Chris Duran said that she's an absolute sweetheart. Like, she was very hands-on, would like help out with certain things. Said sweetheart, but swears like a sailor. Anything that you could share about the now Oscar winner Jamie Lee Curtis?
Dude, and Sarah and I were out there, in Los Angeles for the Oscars, and we just had tears streaming down our cheek. I mean, it makes me emotional just thinking about that. That woman freaking deserves it. She is just, she's self-deprecating. She's so highly intelligent. She does not suffer fools gladly. She will not put up with shit, but she also is very matriarchal. She's sort of, this was her brood, you know what I mean? And really clear, really concise, body as fuck, there's a scene in 2018 which didn't make it to because we shot a new ending, but in that scene, so we're fighting, and I hadn't really experienced her as an athlete yet. I didn't know how athletic she was. And they had a thing where I was holding a knife down like this, holding it out, and she's swinging like a baseball bat, the butt end of a rifle. And before the first take, I'm like, oh, fuck, this is a broken hand, man. Working with an actor is never a good thing, because actors get just batshit crazy. A good, like Tom Cruise is an actor who does his own stunts, and that man is so controlled. I've worked with him. The man is so good at what he does. Most actors are just out of freaking control when they're fighting, and because they're not skilled. 30 takes, she hit the freaking blade, right? Hits the blade. Then the next thing is we end up tussling. I end up on top of her, and David's like kneeling at the side, and he's kind of looking. He goes, nah, I don't know. It looks too much like a porn sex scene. And I looked up at him and went, oh, come on, man, let me hit it one time. And she grabbed my beard and yanked me down, and was like, and she just, we were just having a body moment. And in this modern #2 moment where you have to be so careful about what you say and who you say it to, she and I had permission with David to have a moment that could have been trouble for somebody else. But she's so in control of herself, and she's so remarkable in her ability to read people. And again, she does not suffer fools gladly, which I super appreciate, man. I don't need bullshit in my life. You know what I mean? I don't need someone being nice to me if they don't like me. You don't like me, fuck you. I don't give a shit. Go somewhere else. I think my experience with Jamie is absolutely just top of the freaking heap, professionally for sure, but also it just as a human being.
I was going to say the Australian term is, we like to say, they call a spade, sort of, call it like it is. You kind of know where you stand with them from the get-go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful. And that's part of why I think, so the three films, the one film that we did together starts at the top with David Gordon Green and Jamie Lee Curtis, and those two people being the remarkable human beings that they are and being so freaking good at what they do. That's why we killed it.
Do you think, now this is kind of one of the final questions, it's a bit of a big one. I want to know what your opinion is. What will be the legacy of this Halloween trilogy? That's kind of the main question there. And do you think that the Halloween franchise can only be as successful as it is when it has the likes of a Jamie Lee Curtis and certain people like the John Carpenters in the producing, having this set of core people? Or could you find other people that could take the franchise to greater heights, if that's even possible?
Well, Malik, Akkad and Ryan Freeman over at Trancas have a very keen sense of what they have. I mean, if you look at the films previous to ours, they were films of their time, and Rob Zombie, for instance, did what Rob Zombie does. And Rob Zombie was hired to do what Rob Zombie does. Lots of people loved it, So I would submit that, yeah, of course, there are remarkably talented people out there. And if Malik and Ryan ran into the right combination of, director and cinematographer and the right storyline, it's a wonderful series. I think if there we go.
There's Ruby.
What's up, Ruby? I think I love it. I think absolutely possible, even probable, that they will do something again with some very talented people. I don't see it happening with me.
Yeah.
But I think, and honestly, who knows what they'd go into, but if they were going to make another film, for instance, they're going to wait another 7 to 10 years or 5, or so it's going to be something different. But I knowing the quality of those guys, so I'm just proud of the fact that, and I use proud, the term pride loosely. I'm not a big fan of pride, but I am a fan of what a team can do when we all come together and love each other and pour our hearts and souls into something and create something beautiful and magical. And I think the legacy of these films is going to be the way they affected people. I mean, I have so many like firefighters, EMTs, cops, emergency room docs. I've talked to guys who have been in firefights in Afghanistan and Iraq, and they're like, dude, body parts flying everywhere, carnage. My boys are wounded, and we go back and watch your movies to decompress. I've had so many people come to me and tell me their personal stories, or write me and tell me their personal stories of just trauma like you would not believe, like horrible trauma. And these films have helped them relieve their trauma. So I think the legacy of these films is going to be so deep and far reaching that you really can't quantify it or even qualify it.
That's a fantastic answer. We were talking off air about the writer strike and the actors union happening. Now you said that you're producing some films and you're spinning a lot of plates. You're a very busy man. I think you said you were fixing up your one of your motorcycles before we jumped onto this. But what have you got in the pipeline? And I guess this strike that's happening, is that greatly affecting projects that you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so first of all, I voted for the strikes. I mean, because it's the right thing to do. And I ostensibly voted against my own interest because I'm producing a film, and now I have to hold off on making a film. And this is not likely to be an easy strike. This is likely to be a very long one. But I think this is a watershed moment, not just with the film industry, but with industry as a whole. Corporations by nature can very easily become psychopathic. In fact, there are quite a few studies that show the probably easiest and number one place to find a psychopath is in the C-suite, and they're called CEOs.
Yeah.
And these and don't get to the top because they're kind and generous. They get to the top because they're willing to gouge out eyes and cut throats. Well, the sad thing is, when our industry is, you have, these guys making 25 or $50 million a year who want to take a guy who makes $200 a day as an extra, scan his image, and then use that in perpetuity for that $200. It's like they go into the restaurant and they choke out the busboy because he's the guy that makes the least money and he's not worth anything, But they're going to leave the general manager alone because they want their meal. They'll leave the chef alone because they want their meal. But they know this guy's replaceable. Who cares about him? Well, we care. We care because we're all on this boat together. So it's impacted me. I'd be making a film this fall, and I'm not. But I'll stay in touch with my financial people and keep working the deal, and when we're permitted to, and when we can, I'll produce my film, and then I'll produce the next one. And I'm acting in my films, and I've turned down 4 or 5 films since Halloween Kills, because at this stage of the game for me, I don't need to do anything. I don't, I'll always take the money if they want to give it to me. I'll take the work if it's enjoyable, if I think the script is well written, if I believe the director really has a vision and knows what he's doing. Absolutely, man. I love doing what I do, but I'm past the place where I'm going to work on something I don't believe in. And I'm past the place where I'm going to, roll over for a producer or a movie company because I feel lucky to make a movie and get screwed by them. And I think this is where the Screen Actors Guild is right now, and the Writers Guild is like, we're tired of being screwed over. Like, pay us a fair wage, give us a guarantee, let's just do this together. And remember that without us, you guys have nothing. So it's like, the writers build the aircraft. We're the pilots flying it. And yet the CEOs want us to starve. Yeah, it doesn't work that way, man.
And a great way that people can keep up to date with you is via Instagram. And I believe you're going to be making an appearance at the 45 anniversary Halloween convention in Pasadena later this year, correct?
Yeah, it's a fact. We're really excited about the 45th anniversary. And Instagram, I post, and I will post more sometimes and less sometimes. And I get so freaking busy. But the 45th anniversary is going to be freaking amazing. Just about everybody, if not everybody, who's ever done a Halloween film is going to be there. And talking about guys who've done one stunt, it's going to be amazing. So and the way you Aussies travel, that means a 3-week vacation, a holiday in the United States somewhere. So, man, come on up, man, have some fun.
Absolutely. And I guess did you know what you're getting yourself into with taking on Michael Myers? I mean, the Halloween franchise, in my opinion, is the horror franchise, and the fans are so enduring. Did you know that what you'll get yourself into prior to 2018?
I never thought of it. I mean, the moment I get a call to do a work, so my dad was Special Forces, a combat veteran, and then he was a stock car racer, right? So my dad was very mission oriented, raised 7 boys. They had 27 foster kids from birth till adoption. I mean, my dad was very mission oriented. And I think he imbued my brothers and I with that sort of mentality where the moment I'm the moment I've got something on my crosshairs, that's all that exists. I never thought about, what that meant, or what, or this being an iconic character, or what the fans would think. I never thought about anything. The one thing I wasn't prepared for was the love. The amount of love that I've received from the fan base has just been mind-boggling, and for that I'm eternally grateful. I'm just, I need to give David Gordon Green a big wet sloppy kiss for that, just for creating this reality for me, this loving reality.
James Jude Courtney, you've been very gracious with your time. Thank you for speaking with us at Talking Shape here, and all the best with the future endeavors with those things that you're producing. And hopefully this writer strike and this actors union thing, hopefully we can get it sorted. But really appreciate your time and love your work.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. I look forward to meeting you in person. We'll make it down under sooner or later.
Thank you for listening to Talking Shape, the ultimate Halloween franchise podcast created by the fans. Make sure to stay up to date with the latest episodes by following Talking Shape on Twitter @talking_shape and liking us on Facebook. Feel free to give us a review on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. We appreciate your support. Until next time.
Go home! Go home!